everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another AI Live K-12 session for students and educators. My name is Sherry, and this is the Making Wind Work session at the Earth Institute. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Earth Institute, the core mission is to foster a greater understanding of the science behind climate change and sustainability and what we as global citizens can do. Experts that make up the Earth Institute include economists, business and policy experts, specialists in public health, and earth scientists. The Institute is made up of more than 2 dozen or so research institutes and centers and several hundred people who collaborate across many departments and disciplines at Columbia University. What we're hoping to do with these EI Live K-12 sessions is to introduce you all to our interdisciplinary work through some of our scientific experts. So these weekly sessions will go until the end of June. And if you'd like any more information about the sessions, please do not hesitate to contact us. And today we are very lucky to have Beta Ogruda with us from Commonwealth Edison Company, which you all may know as ComEd. She's going to be speaking to us about wind, how important it is, and how it is used in and for a multitude of systems. Beta works as a DER engineer, and so we'll hear all about what that is and her journey as a STEM professional. And so Beta will share her presentation. We will have time for questions at the end. Please use the Q&A box since the chat is disabled. And we will also have somebody from NASA GIST coming to share some resources from NASA with us after Beta presents.
Hi everyone, how are you? So I'm actually going to start sharing my screen. So I have a couple of slides to go over. So today's session will be about making wind work. So I'm going to kind of go over a couple of slides, and then I'm going to be able to, we're going to actually have a hands-on session that's going to show you how to make a windmill. So if you've looked at the website earlier, there'll be some materials that you can have on hand to kind of join along with me. So my name is Beta Ogruda. I'm actually a DR engineer at ComEd. So a little bit about me, I was actually born in Ujia, Poland. It's a little town that has about like 5,000 people, so you can pretty much walk around the town. So I actually moved to the US at the age of 4. So it was kind of like, come to the US, it was, my parents wanted us to have like the American dream. So I've lived in the city for about the last 8 years. A little bit about when I was attending college, I actually worked at Chase Bank. So, coming into the US, my mom has been a personal banker. So that was kind of like the route that I was going to go. But when I was actually trying to figure out what I wanted to do, my sister was babysitting. So I kind of decided that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, which was kind of like a big thing in my family. I think everyone thought like a mechanical engineer does mechanics or does some car things. So really, if you have like a mechanical engineering degree, you can kind of you can go into different disciplines with that. So some fun facts is I actually enjoy snowboarding in the winter, golf and water sports in the summer. And last year during quarantine, I got a dog and his name is Caboose. So he's actually going to be, I think 2 next year or two in a month. So the way I actually got started at ComEd was ComEd usually has a UIC engineering, or there's a UIC engineering career fair. And ComEd usually goes there to that location and they try to recruit and find individuals. So I've actually done that for a couple of years prior to quarantine, as I would go participate that and be part of the engineering career fair. So during that career fair is when I had an interview and I accepted a ComEd internship for summer of 2013. And then so in summer of 2013, I interned with ComEd Regional Reliability. So I got to inspect feeders leading to substations. And so I'll kind of go over what substations are in a little bit. And then so I opened some transformers to kind of ensure reliability. Some kind of fun things that I did during that internship. I actually got to go to Six Flags and I got to go to Arlington Racetrack and I got to go in the back roads and see what the distribution equipment we have back there. And so I also completed some priority fault lists during that internship. So then in June of 2014, I actually joined ComEd full-time in the engineering rotation program. So what ComEd does is actually they have this 6-month rotation program where instead of putting you into one certain department, they actually put you in this rotation where you get to spend a month in each department. And what I usually tell most of my friends is, I'm usually going through one department to another department within a few years. And, they always wonder, how many departments does ComEd have? So it's actually a great place where you can go through all these different departments, and, and not in one of the departments, you're always doing numerous things. You're always continuously learning. So I was in the 6-month rotation, and, these are some of the departments I was in. So I was in testing group North, transmission and substation engineering, capacity planning, energy efficiency services, support services. And then I was in regional engineering Chicago. So that was actually my last rotation. And so you get to, out of all the rotations you do, you actually get to choose the one that you're most interested in. And they do their best to actually place you in that department. So I went to, in December of 2014, I went to regional engineering in Chicago. So I was there for a couple years, and I really got a chance to go out, do some field work, get to experience designing the system, get to work with different departments. So that was a really great start to starting my career at ComEd. Then in August of 2017, I got an opportunity to be an interconnection specialist. So that's actually processing solar and wind renewable energy applications that come into ComEd. So I really got to see a push from when we had only 700 applications all the way up to like 15,000 applications. So throughout that's when we saw a need for having a DR engineering department. So with all the renewable energy coming on the system, we really wanted to, start to create the tools and start to have ComEd be prepared for the future of renewable energy. So since 2019, I've been in DR engineering for the last couple of years. And actually starting next month, I actually accepted another position to kind of go to our asset management, but I'm very passionate about all the renewable energy. So this is a great session to talk about how wind works. So now I can go over a little bit about the power of the wind. So as I mentioned before, I live in the city of Chicago, which is actually the Windy City. So today we're gonna take a look at how wind works. In this region, we're known for our windy weather. This windy weather can make a cold day feel colder, or a great day for sailing on the lake. However, this windy weather can also serve to help us generate electricity. As long as the wind is moving, we might be able to generate electricity from it. So wind is actually simply the air in motion. It's caused by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface by energy from the sun. And since the Earth's surface is made of different types of land and water, it absorbs the sun energy at different rates. An ideal situation for the formation of local wind is an area where land and water meet, which is the most ideal situation in Chicago. So it actually, what it does is during the day, the above the land heats up more quickly than the air above water, and the warm air over the land expands, becomes less dense and rises. So the heavier, denser, cool wind over the water flows into its place, creating wind. And this process happens all over the globe. So sometimes if you're, I know sometimes if I've taken flights in the past, usually if you're flying over the water, you'll kind of get that, turbulence, and that's kind of really where you have most of the wind happening. So people have actually been using wind, for centuries, from sailing ships to grinding grains to pumping water. And as long as there's moving air, we can use it to make works. So the windmills are actually used on farms and at mills, might look different than the ones we use for generating electricity, but both are actually useful for making work for us. Windmills of all different kinds actually work mostly the same way. So if you can see in this picture, the blades are attached to a hub and an axle. And as the wind moves the blades, the axle spins, and the axle is attached to the nacelle, which is the box behind the blade. And this transforms the motion energy in the wind to electricity. And you might have seen some of the large wind farms outside of Chicago. And so there's some even in the middle of cities. I don't think we have any in Chicago, but wind can actually be a great source of power for Illinois residents. So this is kind of just a slide going over what our traditional grid looks like. So the traditional grid is a series of wires and equipment that's actually used to send electricity to power on homes, businesses, the powers on your lights, your computers, everything that requires electricity. So the ComEd grid has actually mainly been a one-directional system since the early 1900s, with all the generation being created in a power plant and flow down through power lines to a customer's home. So equipment on the grid was originally installed and designed to safely and reliably provide energy to millions, billions of homes and businesses. Since the actual introduction of renewable energy, what's different is instead of the central power plant bringing down all the generation, so you have distributed generated plants that are in different locations, such as wind turbines, community solar. So this actually makes not the power be one directional, but it makes it be bi-directional. So you can have a home that has solar, you can have that home generating, and it comes out through the bi-directional meter. That's kind of why we're preparing for the future, is because this bi-directional system is completely different than our traditional one-directional system. So now I'm actually gonna, or actually let's keep the screen on. So a couple of the materials, so we're gonna get into our hands-on section. So a couple of materials that you're gonna wanna need to do this is you're gonna want one extra long straw. I think it's not listed on here, but you're actually gonna want two different kinds of straws. So you're gonna want a stirring straw and you're gonna want a drinking straw. So they're a little bit different. So one is larger than the other. Then you're gonna need some masking tape. You're gonna need some string or some thread. You're gonna want some paper clips, a large foam cup, 2 straight pins, and then you're gonna need, you can use a binder clip. I noticed that I didn't use a binder clip and it still worked for me. You're gonna wanna have a hole punch. You're gonna need some marker and some scissors. And so now we can go into the hands-on section and I'll stop sharing my screen. But this is actually what we're gonna try to make. And so as part of this seminar, there was the template provided, so you can follow along with me. Let me stop sharing. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna want to, let me actually move my camera here. So you're gonna wanna take your cup. So you're gonna wanna put your cup upside down and you're gonna wanna put it on the bottom. So have the cup face there. And so you're gonna wanna take your template. So the template that was provided should look like this. And so you're gonna wanna take your template and you're gonna wanna, just cut it out of the piece of paper. I actually just already pre-did it. So I'll just take this paper over here. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna wanna cut alongside these dotted lines. So I'll just go ahead and do that part because I have one completed, but I'll just kind of do that so everyone can follow along. So you're gonna wanna cut along the sides. All right, so we have it cut. Then if you see the dots right here, you're actually gonna wanna use your hole puncher and you're gonna wanna make sure that you hole punch in these areas where these dots. So let me just go ahead and hole punch that. All right. I hope everyone's following along. And you don't have to use a hole punch. You can, even if you put something in there just to make sure that it's even. So then I hole punched, maybe it's a little crooked. And then I found the best way to get the middle hole punch is actually just to kind of make a little square like this. And you'll just want to make a little hole like that. So then next, what you're going to want to do is now that you have your hole punch, you're going to want to align all the centers in the middle. So you're going to want to align all of that. Let me face it this way. So you're going to want to align it in the middle. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your stir straw. So it's actually, so for here I have this black straw. So you're just going to put it through the middle like this. So everyone can see it. So actually do it like this way. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put your pins. So I have pins over here. And what I actually learned the first time when I was doing this is you want to make sure that you put your pins inside, and then you're going to want to actually make it so it goes through the straw. So because you want your pinwheel to be attached. So we'll just, and you want to also, if you're doing this, be careful, because I know some of these pins might be a little, you know, you just want to be careful. All right, so I kind of made the pinwheel, so it should look like this. And as I rotate the straw, the pinwheel should rotate with it. So now I'm just going to put this over to the side, because what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your other straw. So this is actually the other straw that I have. And you're going to want to make sure that you cut this straw to 8 centimeters. So you can either use a ruler, or, you know, you just want to make sure that it fits like this on the top of the cup. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take this on the top of the cup, and you're going to want to use masking tape, or any kind of tape that you have should work. So you're just going to want to tape this on top like this. And so it fits on top of the cup. Then you're going to want to make sure that, and this is where it's important that you use 2 different types of straws. So you're going to want to make sure that you are able to put this straw within the stirring straw. So this is kind of what your pinwheel is supposed to, or your windmill is supposed to do right now. So the way that we're actually going to make it do work is we're going to have a paper clip. You're going to take a paper clip, and then you're going to want to take some string. So you're going to want to take the string. I think the best way is to cut it into like 12 inches. So you cut that, and then you're going to want to attach. You're going to want to attach your paper clip. So I actually have one that's ready, so we can kind of start this. So you just attach this, and then you'll attach it at the top. And you want to make sure that when it's attached at the top, that it's not going to, you know, be rotating around. So this is how you make the pinwheel, or the pinwheel within the windmill. So I actually have a ready one, and I have a fan. So I'll kind of show you guys how the windmill is actually able to do work. So I have my windmill ready here. And so I have this nice little fan. And so we'll just turn on the fan. And so depending, and so this is why it's important that this is attached. And then also this part, you're gonna want this to be attached to here. So what you're gonna see here is if I put the wind in one direction, it's actually gonna spin the paper clip upwards. If I spin it this way, it's gonna bring it the opposite way. Let's just turn this to the highest way. If you guys can able to see. And if I keep going. You know, and it just wants to rotate this way. So maybe let's try it this way. All right, hold on. For some reason it wants to rotate this way, but anyway, so if you keep rotating this way, I'm going to show you guys. So if I rotate this way, it's actually going to, and that's what the wind will actually do. So if I rotate it this way, you can see the paper clip comes up. If I rotate it this way, it comes up here. But the spinning should be done by the wind. But my little fan and the angle of it isn't the best. But so that's how you're going to make a windmill. And I hope everyone is able to make their windmill and maybe show how that's complete. But thanks to everyone, and I hope you learned some interesting things today.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Just a reminder, everybody, to keep putting your questions in the Q&A box, and we will answer them. But right now, we're going to have Rosalba, who's going to come and share some resources, and then we will get to everybody's questions.
Thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope my screen is sharing now, and I'm also going to share some links on the chat. Okay. So, hello, everyone. My name is Rosalba Giarratano, and I help support NASA's Office of STEM Engagement at the Goddard Institute for Space Studies in New York City. And I am happy to share about some supplemental resources related to today's topic. So I would like to highlight Climate Kids, Museum in a Box, and NASA spin-off. So the first resource that I want to share about is Climate Kids. So this is a website designed for kids. And so it has articles and games, activities, videos, and much more about climate, greenhouse gases, oceans, many more topics. The specific link that I shared with you is about a section regarding renewable energy. And so it has an interview to a renewable energy scientist who works with wind energy and ocean energy, but primarily with wind energy. So you might find that interesting. The next resource is Museum in a Box. So this is a program that brings the physical sciences of flight to students in grades K to 12. The specific link that I shared with you is about a lesson targeting students in high school. And with that lesson, you can explore the power of the wind, learn how wind is created by convection, and then put the power of wind to use for the creation of a wind turbine. And last but not least, there is this resource. It's called NASA Spin-off. And so this is a publication that highlights NASA technologies that benefit life on Earth in the form of commercial products and services. So these are technologies that are designed to do some research, say in space, but then we can actually use them on Earth throughout our daily life. So it can be something from your cell phone camera to the memory foam in your mattress. So like Spino says, there's more space in your life than you think. And so the specific link that I am sharing is about a spin-off that was developed in the early 1990s, as NASA was planning for an extended stay on Mars. And of course, in Mars, there are no power plants. And so one of NASA's research centers, NASA Ames, started looking at combining wind and solar power. And so to test the technology, they turned to the South Pole, which also has very harsh environment like Mars. And so then NASA Ames partnered with the NSF and the Department of Energy to advance wind turbine technology. And they awarded Northern Power Systems a contract to construct a wind turbine at the South Pole. So you can learn much more about that spin-off. If you visit that publication, you can access it online, or you can also request a free print copy if you wish. And so, yeah, so I hope that you enjoy those resources. And that's it for me today.
Thank you so much, Rosalba, for that. And so now we will get to everybody's questions. Feel free to keep putting them in the chat because we have some time and we definitely want to get to everybody's. And so one question, it's a bit more general, Beta, so feel free to answer it however you would like to see fit, but can you talk a little bit more about your professional life as an engineer, or just STEM is what they put in there, but if you would like to talk a little bit more about your journey with that.
Sure. Yes, I think, I went to school for mechanical engineering, which is probably a little bit different because you have ComEd and it's a utility company, so you have a lot of electrical engineers. What I think, I think when you're in school, you think you're going to be using all the things that you learned within class. You think you're going to, do calculations. But I think what's really great about, going toward engineering and going toward, those classes is that you learn those you learn those problem solving skills. And I think that really helps you when you're stuck in a problem and you need to figure that out. So I think that really helps, the way I always think about it, any single problem is, I think it is, I have all these variables and I'm trying to figure out which variable I don't have, which ones I do need to figure out. So I think that's been very helpful being in school, and just, every single test or every single class, you have to just always solve what is X or what is Y. And I think that's kind of, one of the things in a STEM field is you're always looking for solutions and you're always innovating. So I think that's kind of been helpful. What else I learned is, going for mechanical engineering, I didn't know how that would benefit me in a company like ComEd sometimes, because you have electrical, but I think not going to an electrical degree, I've learned of all the electrical aspects. And then for mechanical engineering, I've learned, all the things that we have on our distribution system, which are all the poles and all the equipment. Then we also have, they're called manholes. So those are kind of the places in the street where we also have distribution equipment. So I learned throughout, my career at ComEd is that throughout all those equipment that we have, you're always going to want mechanical engineers and you're always going to want civil engineers. Because things are rotating, things are moving, you're going to have stresses on poles, you might not have gears or anything like that, but you're still going to want to know how everything operates. So I think that's kind of where my schooling has helped me in my career at ComEd and just helping with problem solving skills. I hope that answered the question.
No, I definitely think it does, and a great example of how skills in one career, can definitely transfer, kind of wherever you go, which is wonderful. Next question we have is, how has wind power changed over time, especially wind farms?
What I can actually say about wind farms, I know since, ComEd, we don't do the installation of the wind farms, but I know what's changed is, depending on where you install it, wind farms and windmills, they're going to operate when you have the highest wind. So one situation that we actually have is out in the west where we have a lot of different wind farms. You'll have it generating when you have the highest wind. But what you're going to actually see is if you want to install, let's say, solar in that area, you're not going to be able to have both operating, because let's say if it's like a sunny day and then if it's a windy day, they're both going to be operating at maximum output. So you're going to want to manage that a little bit. You're going to want to manage how much wind is outputted. So I think what's probably changed a little bit is, putting some of those smart features in wind farms and, just making sure that it doesn't operate when there's some other generation that's operating, and just kind of understanding the system and the control. So I think that's what's improved with wind farms. What I do think also that's improved with wind farms is, I think as the wind generates, you're going to want to make sure that, I think sometimes out west, we'll see that some aren't operating. So it's just understanding and controlling that's kind of changed the technology of the wind farms.
Speaking of technology, our next question is, how are the wind turbines in the South Pole progressing?
How are the wind turbines in the South progressing? Oh, is that a question for like Texas maybe? I know, yeah.
The South Pole is, I think, what they're talking about, but in general, we can always talk about how they are progressing overall too, or talk about Texas, because I know there was a lot going on there too.
Yeah. So I'm not sure of how they're in the South Pole, but I know down in Texas, there were some wind farms. So I think some of the things with renewable energy, wind or solar, is it's not always the most, it's not reliable. So you're not going to have like a power plant, you're going to have it operating 24/7. How much it's going to be outputting. With some wind is you really need to know when it's going to be operating, and actually what a great thing is to know is weather. So if it's going to be a windy day within the next couple of days, you can use that forecast of knowing what weather is to kind of know how much weather is going to be outputted. So I think all these variables that you can bring in to help you understand when it's actually going to be producing, I think that's very helpful, and that can be helpful I'm not sure of the situation in the South Pole of the winds, but I think that's kind of, some of the things that can benefit you is if you know all the different variables and what's occurring.
Great. Our next question is, do the blades of a wind turbine rotate to face the greatest wind possible, or are they stationary in a set direction? And that kind of also ties into another question we have, which is, are all wind turbines designed the same?
I think so. I think they do face the way where the wind comes. So I think most wind in the northern hemisphere, it kind of follows along with the weather. So you have the weather in the northern hemisphere that goes from the west, from the south, from the west, and it goes over to the east. So most windmills are going to be facing that direction where you're going to get that wind coming from there. And then it's going to be the same thing. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're going to have the weather patterns go the opposite direction. So it comes from the east north. So then you're going to want to position your wind farms that way. So I think looking at the weather and when your highest wind and wind gusts are, you're going to want to position where you're going to get your maximum output. So I think before placing wind mills and wind farms, they do, the engineering part of it is they'll find the best location to place them.
Great, thank you. And so then somebody asked, are all the wind turbines just like the ones that, we made in that activity? Or are there kind of different designs or different designs that are kind of, being put out there right now or experimented with?
Yeah, so there's definitely different ones. So I think what the one I showed, so the one that I showed is actually showing you how the windmill can actually produce mechanical engineering or mechanical energy. So this is actually going to be it's going to be spinning. So you're going to be producing, mechanical engineering. So it's actually making the paperclip come up and down. But I think what's different with the windmills and wind farms that we have out in the West or in different regions is that portion, instead of it turning into mechanical energy, it's actually turning it into electrical energy. So I think that's kind of just a little bit differences, but you're still using a source, which is your wind, and you're still going to have that be rotating, and then that rotation creates either mechanical engineering or electrical engineering or electrical energy.
Another question, we're big into the design of the wind turbines. Which parts of the design affect the efficiency of a wind turbine?
I think there's probably different things that may, create the output and efficiency. I think depending on what the blades look like, depending on what the height is, I think that can affect the efficiency. So I think there's, multiple variables that can affect with the efficiency. I'm not sure what the most efficient one is. There's wind farms, but I know a little bit about like solar and how they can be more efficient. But I think during like the engineering studies, that's when they'll look at what's the most efficient wind farm out there.
Makes sense. So also, I know that you probably, do a lot of studies before you are, creating and designing these and actually putting them up. But do you collaborate with a lot of maybe biologists? Because I know sometimes wind farms, can be a danger to birds and wildlife sometimes. So is that something that gets taken into account, or is it more of like a cost benefit where it's like you get a way more energy than you do like some of the birds, that run into the turbines?
So as far as like the wind farms, so we actually don't make the design at ComEd, so we like accept the designs. So there'll be like a different developer that will come in and they'll say that they want to create this wind farm, and so we'll kind of create the study and see what that's going to make an effect on our on our system. So that's what we'll do. But as far as environmental aspects of the wind farm, I know, different parts of Illinois and different parts maybe of different states, you'll have them be actually, there'll be an environmental area. So then if it's in an environmental area, it'll go through different studies. So when someone's installing it, it needs to go through permits. So there'll be multiple different studies that other, the state or the environmental agencies might look at to see how that would affect, surrounding birds or any other surrounding animals or habitats as well too.
Another question we have is, how long is the lifespan of the wind turbines and their blades? Can they be recycled when they get old?
So I'm not sure on that question. I think the wind turbines that we have out west, I know they've been around for, probably at least 10, 20 years. So I think they do last for a long time. I know most of our nuclear plants, they last for about 40 years. So too, most of the wind farms kind of last for around that same similar time frame. Yeah, a lot of wind questions, wind farm questions.
Because probably we made, collectively, we all made a bit of a wind farm, today with our activity. Another question we have are, what are the advantages and disadvantages of wind turbines?
I think what's probably, so I know from one wind turbine that you'll actually see out in, that's out constructed, is one of those is actually 1 megawatt of power. So that's actually equal to power about 1,000 homes, around up to 1,000 homes. So I think what's the benefit is it's actually going to give you a lot of power. So when you're going to have high winds, you're going to be able to power all those homes. But the downside to it is if you're not going to have wind, you're not going to be able to power those homes. So then you need to find a second source to really power that. And that's kind of, with any renewable energy, the same thing with solar is you'll have solar panels. It'll be great on a sunny day, but on a less sunny day, you might not have that source. So I think that's kind of, the upside and the downside is when it's generating, you'll have a lot of good reliable power, but when it's not generating, and maybe a not so windy day, that's when you're kind of depending on the weather. So I think that's, we all know kind of how weather is. So sometimes it might change drastically. So I think that's something that's also maybe a disadvantage.
Definitely. And we have a question about, is the material recyclable again? So we kind of talked about that, but then they go a little further with talking about cradle to cradle. So maybe talk a little bit about if that's possible with the wind turbines, or if any part of ComEd, is working towards having a cradle to cradle aspect with your materials.
So as far as the materials, so since we don't actually install them, so it's actually like the developers that install them, we just kind of manage the electricity that comes on. So I think they probably do recycle it. I'm not sure, of that exact question if they do recycle it, but I would hope that they do.
Or repurpose them for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have another question back to the birds. Is it true that wind turbines are killing or massively killing birds, or have birds adapted to them?
It's hard to answer that question because I know the wind farms that we have, there isn't situations where they would injure any birds, because anytime that it does injure any birds, there's usually an investigation that needs to get created. That's kind of, with any environmental agency, they usually, if there's a lot of birds being, hurt by any renewable energy, they kind of investigate that. So I would hope that that doesn't happen. I think if there's a certain, the placement that they put the wind farms to, if there's birds migrating in that certain location, they wouldn't want to place it. And so I think, when they're installing, they'll probably look at the bird migration as well too, and just to make sure that they're not within that area. So it just really depends on the placement of where you're putting that, and you want to make sure that it's not someplace where there's a lot of birds or around a very habitat that has animals.
Another question we have is about just the placement of grids. Just how do you place a grid? And I'm wondering if that's maybe connected to where do you place these wind turbines and these solar panels, and I guess how close do they have to be to where they're going to give the energy?
Oh, so how are the wind farms, how close do they have to be placed? So I think usually the wind farms need to be placed, it's probably, I know they're pretty close. I think they're probably within 1,000 feet of each other. So I think, just as long as they're not, so you don't want them too close to each other, because then you don't want one wind turbine affecting the wind of another one. So you do want them roughly, pretty evenly spaced, where one turbine isn't going to be affecting the output of another turbine. So I think that's kind of where you're going to want the wind turbines to be placed.
That makes a lot of sense, definitely. So thank you. I mean, those were some great questions, and you all appear to be very focused on wind turbines and wind turbine design. So perhaps we have, some future engineers in the mix here. And we would like to both thank Rosalba and Beta for, giving your time and talking about wind energy, your role at ComEd, and, walking us through how to DIY our own. I'm very excited to try it out myself. And so if anybody, wants these additional resources or the recording of this video, you will all get an email of it to the email that you registered for this event with. So thank you again for coming, Beta, and look forward to our EI Live sessions next year as well.
All right, thank you for having me. All right, thanks everyone.